All right, nice and quick here. This should be a nice and straightforward video. We're just looking to review some skills, frankly, that you will have learned in grade 9 and practiced in grade 10. This is a suitable video if you're in a 3C or a 2D class here in Ontario. The prerequisite skills. I want you to make sure that you can tell apart terms. All right, that you can tell, that you recognize, hey, what are the different pieces that separate terms? It's plus or minus signs. Right, that these plus or minus signs indicate a separation of terms. So you could always, if you wanted to, you could count the plus or minus signs in any given expression, and because each of them is when you are separating your expression, right? So let's say we have an expression here and we have a plus sign, we have a minus sign, a plus sign, a minus sign. Then there are 4 things separating my terms, and that would tell us that we have 5 terms, one here, one here, one here, one here, and one here, right? So if we're looking at example 1a, we should be able to recognize, hey, there are 3 separators. That means we're working with 4 terms. If we're working with question 1b, we have 3 separators. That means we're working with 4 terms again. So as we work forward here, just jumping right into the review. Well, if you're collecting like terms, then what we're doing is we're identifying, okay, which of these terms are alike? Which of them can we combine together, and which ones have to stay separated? Right? So like terms, we'll remember, have the exact same variables and the same exponents on those variables. All right? If there are exponents off of the variables, we don't really care about it. We only care about the exponents on the variables, and we're making sure that if we're combining to collect our like terms together, it's because the terms have the same variables with the same exponents. Now in this case, my 4x, that's my first term. We already discussed, we know there are 4 terms here. My 4x is my first term, so I'm looking for any other terms that have a single x with no exponents on them, and I see one right here. Right? And then afterwards, I also see a 3, and I'm looking for any other terms that have no x's whatsoever. There's another one. So there are 2 different kinds of terms right here. My 4x and my 5x, those ones are similar. I can combine those by adding the coefficient, that is adding the number in front. 4 plus 5 is 9. What kind of terms are they? They're x terms, so we're working with 9x. Plus, and then I'm working with, and that came from my 4x and 5x, and then I'm working with the 6 and the 3, so 9x plus 3 plus 6, oh, that's 9 once more, so I'm working with 9x plus 9. Can I combine these? You might be tempted to, because, hey, we see a 9 both times, but that's not what we're focused on if we're collecting like terms. We're focused on the variable, that is the x, and the exponents on the variable. Well, these do have different variables. One of them has an x and the other does not, so we cannot combine them any further. Now, the next piece we're going to focus on is what happens if there are negative signs that we're working with. So first, again, we'll go through the same process. I see a 10 right here. There are no variables. Are there any other terms that have no variables? Yes, there's one. And then I'm looking, okay, my next term has a 5y. I'm looking for any other terms that have a y. Hey, there's one at the end. Now, quick question. How many y's is that? Oh, it's just one y, right? This is just another way of writing one y. So when I'm combining right here, okay, my 10 plus my 2, that's 12 that I'm working with. And then I'm working with my y's, and we'll need to be careful. What goes along with these terms that we're working with are any minus signs. If there's a minus sign in front, it means you have a negative term. So really, I'm working with negative 5y, and I'm working with negative 1y over here, right? Well, if I'm working with negative 5y plus a negative 1y, that's really like negative 6y. So you'll need to make sure you're feeling comfortable with your integers here. If you're not, you'll need to, honestly, I would search up on YouTube adding and subtracting integers. That might help you out. But either way, we're working here. We have 12 minus 6y. Are these similar terms? Are they like terms? No, they're not. One of them has a y, the other does not. Fantastic. Next, we need to make sure we're comfortable when there are exponents on our variables. Right? So in this case, okay, so I have an x squared term. Do I have any other terms with an x squared term? Yes, I do right here. And then I'm working with a 5 term. Do I have any other terms without any variables whatsoever? Yes, nice work. So here really I'm working with 6x squared and 8x squared. Okay, if I add those together, that's 14x squared plus 5 and 4, okay, plus 9. Now, if you followed, and this makes sense to you, I want you to double check because there are 2 mistakes. Remember, we just learned over here, if there's a negative sign in front of it, it stays along. That means we're working with a negative term. Well, in this case, I have 2 negative signs. I have one here and one here. So I'm not working with 14x squared because I'm working with 6x squared minus 8x squared. Okay, I have 6 things. Someone comes up to me and takes 8 of them away. How many do I have? I have negative 2 of them. All right, so I'm working here. I have negative 2x squared, and let's fix my second term as well. I have a 5 minus 4, not plus 4, minus 4, so I'm working with plus 1. Are these terms alike? No, they're not, because one has a variable with an exponent, the other does not. Now, in each of these first examples, A, B, and C, we only have two different types of terms. It's very possible to have more than two types of terms, as we will see in example D. Now again, we can count if we want to how many terms we have. We can see we have 5 separators. That means we have 6 terms that we're working with. My very first kind of a term just has y's. It has no exponents on the y's, so I'm going to look for terms that have a y showing up but no exponents on them. Looks like I have one way over here. All right, my next kind of a term, I'm working with a 3y squared, so it's a y squared kind of a term. Do I see any others? Yes, I do over here. And lastly, I'm working with terms with no variables. So that is, I'll combine all of my y terms. Okay, so I have 7y minus 10y. Don't forget that minus sign. So I'm working with negative 3y. And then my y squared terms I'm working with, and really I can cross these out because I have so many, it might help me make sure I'm not forgetting any if I cross them out as I go along. So I have a negative 3y squared right here, and then I have an 8y squared over there. Those are two terms that are my y squared terms. One is a negative, one is a positive. I'm working with plus 5y squared. I always keep along with me after combining my like terms, I always keep the same variables along the way. Okay, so I've used up these terms right here, leaving me just with 2 terms remaining, plus 5 minus 2. I'm working with positive 3 right here. Nice work, us. These are 3 different kinds of terms, so I cannot combine them any further. That's how we're collecting our like terms. Next, you need to make sure if you're working through, you need to make sure you're comfortable multiplying your terms. If you're multiplying your terms, what you do, you multiply your coefficients. Those are the numbers in front. You multiply the coefficients together, and then you multiply the variables together. So 5b times 2b. Now you'll notice there's no times sign here, but if we see 2 brackets together, we know we're multiplying. 5 times 2, that's 10. b times b. Well, another way of writing that is b squared. So we're working here with 10b squared. This is a 2 because there are 2 b's that we see multiplying by one another. Now, if we're working over here, in this case, I'm multiplying one term by another term. I have negative 4 times 3y. One of my terms has y's involved, the other does not. That's fine. I'm not really focused on comparing them. I just want to make sure I'm keeping track of what I'm multiplying. So my negative 4, that's just a coefficient, or rather that's a constant. That's just a number that I'm working with. There are no variables, so that's going to multiply by the other number. Negative 4 times 3, I'm working with negative 12. How many y's in total do I see? I see a single y. Now, we're handling these differently from the questions above because last time, look at all the yellow. Look at all of the yellow. Last time, there were separators between my terms. Down here, I do not have separators, not quite yet, as we're working through. Okay, so we're multiplying negative 5 times positive 3. I'm working with a negative 15, and then an x squared because there are 2 x's that I'm working with. Lastly, I have, 4 times 5, that's 20. And then I have 2 y's here that are multiplied together already, times another y over here. If I wanted to see my hidden exponent, there's a 1 on that. I'm working with 3 y's multiplying together. That's y cubed. Nice and straightforward, okay. Lastly, if we're multiplying into brackets, so that is we're multiplying one piece by 2 terms. Right? There are 2 terms because I know plus or minus signs separate my terms. If I'm doing this, I need to multiply this 4 times every single piece inside my brackets. That is, I'm going to multiply my 4 times the 3y first. I end up with 12y. And then I'm going to multiply my 4 times the other term as well. It's a negative 1. It's not a positive 1. It's a negative 1. So negative 1 times 4, I throw that into my calculator, minus 4. So this way, if we're expanding, if ever the instructions are to expand, then we're looking to take something that has brackets and write it in a way that has no brackets. That's our goal. All right, so we will be writing and drawing in these rainbows as needed to track where we're going. So we're working right here, and we have ourselves negative 2 times x squared, and then negative 2 times 5. Okay, well, negative 2 times x squared, one of these is just a number, the other is just a variable, so we're just going to combine these together. That's negative 2x squared. Next, negative 2 times 5. Okay, both of these are numbers. Negative 2 times 5, I can throw that into my calculator, negative 10. So I'm working with negative 2x squared times minus 10, and that is I took something with brackets and I wrote it in a way that has no brackets. Lastly, as we're working through here, you know what? I'm going to challenge you folks to try out question C on your own. Pause the video, unpause, see how you did. And then we're going to try out question D together. Question D, where we have numbers and variables at play in our first piece, and we see two different separators over here, so we'll be drawing in 3 rainbows because there are 3 terms in my brackets. If I have 3 terms in my brackets at the start, I expect 3 terms in my expression at the end. So I'm working with 2x times x squared, that is 2x cubed. And then I'm working with 2x times 4x, that is 8x squared. And then I'm working with 2x times negative 3. Don't forget that negative sign. We're working with negative 6x. So if you followed along, I'm hoping you feel a little bit more comfortable working with some of these algebraic skills. That is multiplying into our brackets. That is multiplying terms with variables and coefficients and collecting like terms. Nice work here, folks.